Hello and welcome to the opening game of the NFL football season, with the game being the Detroit Lions versus the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a very fun game, and what we are going to go through today is we're going to be breaking down that game, and then we're going to go through a position by position breakdown, show some ownership and my thoughts on, each player themselves to see where we can find our edges and how we can all win some money. So, without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do, come join us at LionStar. Only $39.99 per month gets you access to all of our props and all of our DFS stuff, the optimizers, the matchup tools, the ownership, all of that. And of course, Props AI, which has been dominating the prop markets now. So if you don't want to pay that upfront $39.99 a month without trying us out, that is good news, because you can go to our app store, and in the app store you can get a free 3-day trial if you are new to LionStar. Take advantage, come join us, get involved in the chat. Let's have a good time. All right, game time. Lions versus Chiefs. It's 53.5 over under. A lot of offense today. Chiefs are favored by 4.5. The other thing I would have to say is this line keeps moving up. It was 51.5 a couple days ago. It is up to 53.5. It's a very interesting spot. The big news here is Travis Kelce. He got hurt earlier this week. Missed practice Wednesday. Is officially labeled as questionable. Now, Pro Football Doc, Dr. Chow, is saying that it's unlikely that Kelce plays. Meanwhile, the news coming out this morning is saying that Kelce is going to push to play. He is questionable, and I think the push to play is real. It is a bone bruise that he has in his knee. He's going to do all he can to get on that field. Now, we'll see if it happens or not. If he plays, personally, if people are scared to play him and it looks like ownership is low, I am going to be hammering Travis Kelce, just because if he plays, I gotta think he's going to be able to do everything he needs to, especially in the first game of the season. I just don't think the Chiefs will risk him. All right, with that being said, if he does not play, Noah Gray becomes the tight end 1 and will pick up some of Kelce's workload. However, I do not expect him to pick up all of Kelce's workload. So our projection system right now has Kelce in the game, and it's just because right now it shows he's questionable, so we have to consider him in. As time goes on, that may change today. For this show, we will talk about both guys and how it changes if he is in or out. Some other things I want to talk about. This is the first game of the season. The only data we have is to go off preseason, which really isn't very good data. So I know the depth chart for, say, the Kansas City Chiefs running backs says Pacheco, McKinnon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I wouldn't put much stock into that. It looks like Pacheco is going to be fairly high owned. He is listed as the RB1, but look, he was hurt all preseason, recovering from a surgery. There is a very, very high likelihood that Pacheco doesn't play a full allotment of snaps today. So maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is got most of the work in the preseason, is low owned, gets a little more reps than he normally would. I think these type of things are things we need to think about for these showdown slates. And then on the other side, Gibbs is, a highly touted prospect, but it is his first game. How much of the workload is he going to get? How much of the workload is Montgomery going to get? These are all answers or questions you need to be asking yourself, and not so reliant on projections today just because of any week Week 1, projections are the most fragile. We just don't have much data to go on. Now, I do expect a decent workload for both Gibbs and Montgomery, and there's a chance that it's a 50-50 split and both are viable in that situation. The KC side, a lot more murky there. It's also murky in the wide receiver room. So let's get into it a little bit more. Let's get into the matchups and the ownership. So we'll start with quarterbacks. Obviously, you got Jared Goff and you have Patrick Mahomes. Both are in a good situation in this game. Patrick Mahomes, I do believe, will be the highest owned captain. Jared Goff will probably be the third highest owned captain or MVP, depending on if you are on FanDuel or DraftKings. Now, with Mahomes, I could see him using him as a captain. He's in a good spot. He should do well. And I don't think he takes too big of a hit if Kelsey is not there. I just think Andy Reid will find other ways to spread the ball around. As far as Jared Goff, I'm not putting him at captain or MVP. The reason being he has no rushing upside. And most likely, one of his receivers has a very good game if Jared Goff has a good game. And with receivers getting more points for their yards, their touchdown, their receptions, I would rather have them in the MVP spot than Jared Goff. On FanDuel, with it being 0.5 points per reception, Jared Goff makes a little bit more sense, but I still would rather go to a receiver. They're just more likely to hit that upside than Jared Goff. Now, both these guys are high owned. So, as I said, Mahomes, likely the highest owned captain, also one of the highest owned players on the slate. Jared Goff is right behind, just going to be a little bit lower owned as a captain or MVP. Next, we got our running back situation. So Gibbs is looking like the highest owned running back. Pacheco is next at 36%. Now, the KC backfield is an interesting one to consider here. There's a very real chance one of these guys has a good game for KC, but the workload, we are not sure what's going to go on here. Pacheco listed as the RB1, didn't play much in preseason, still working back, and in the last preseason game was the third running back to get into the game behind McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So with ownership being so high on Pacheco, I'm inclined to get a little different here and use a little more McKinnon or CEH because there is so much volatility in this situation. Now, if we look at the matchups, we are not showing RB3 because generally it doesn't matter, but in this situation it very much does. But if you look, the Chiefs have the better matchup in the running game. However, this is a big however, the Chiefs defense had Chris Jones all last season. He is out today. And with that, the Lions are going to be much, much better at running the ball. I do like the Lions running backs quite a bit, especially as a captain or MVP. This is a offense that had two very capable fantasy running backs last season, and the skill level of both running backs got better this year with the addition of Montgomery and Gibbs. Jamal Williams had 17 rushing touchdowns. That is likely the role that Montgomery is taking, whereas Gibbs is taking more of the DeAndre Swift role. Now, DeAndre Swift's role in the beginning of the season last year was very, very good. And if he has that role like Swift did in the beginning of the season, Gibbs is going to be an amazing player for fantasy this year. And that's the role that I would expect him to get. Montgomery is going to get plenty of action. I like both of those guys. Now, ownership-wise, Gibbs, fairly high owned, 60%. Montgomery, 25%. So using Montgomery and not Gibbs, it will give you some leverage on the field, which is, a pretty interesting spot. Now let's get over to the wide receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, clearly the best wide receiver in this game. He's going to get all the targets he can handle. His line is 6.5 receptions right now, and that's at minus like 150. So what that is telling me is sportsbooks are expecting him to get 7 catches, most likely, or probably like 6.8, something like that. So Amon-Ra looks very, very good. It is very likely he has, say, 7 catches, 80, 90 yards plus, and possibly a touchdown. I think he is going to be in a very good spot and should be considered in all lineups. Next, we got the Chiefs receivers to talk about here. Now, this is very murky as far as what's going to happen. It does look like Sky Moore, MVS, and Kadarius Toney are going to get most of the work. However, Justin Watson is likely to get involved quite a bit. He played a ton last year. Very well could play a lot again this year. Watson also had an 18-yard ADOT last year. So he is a deep threat that the Mahomes is comfortable with. So those are kind of the receivers you need to think about on KC. However, do not forget about, say, Rashee Rice or Justin Ross. Both of them could play a little bit, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if they have plays designed for Rice to get a little bit of work in the game. Similarly, how they did Sky Moore last year, where he didn't necessarily ever have a blow-up game, but they made sure he got a couple touches. Excuse me. So I think it is very interesting. All these receivers, and ownership is so spread out on them. I really like getting different with some of these KC receivers. All it takes is one of them to get a touchdown. MVS, I think, is too low owned. Kadarius Toney is too low owned. Need to think about all of these guys. Sky Moore, for what I'm seeing, I think he might be a little over owned. Now he's going to get work. He's going to play a lot. But at this ownership and how murky it is, how many routes he's going to run, all of that, I don't mind getting different here. So I like it. Do not be afraid to get different. On the Detroit side, it really is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then we really have no idea. Marvin Jones is priced a little bit high, but he is likely the WR2. But then Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond will both play a little bit. I think Reynolds is very interesting. Khalif Raymond is a deep threat that is interesting. And we really have to consider all of them. All right, tight end landscape. So I think the consensus right now is people do not think Travis Kelce is going to play. Thus, his ownership is super low. If he plays, he's probably going to be 30+% owned, something like that. If he does not play, Noah Gray is going to be very, very high owned. 23% is not where he's going to end up. He will end up higher. Projections across the industry will go up on him, and thus that ownership is going to get insane. Now, I think he is a very good play. If he stays at 23%, I will probably be just pounding Noah Gray, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I think he will get upwards to 60%. In that situation, I think you need to consider fading him. Play some if you're playing in multiple lineups, but there's major leverage not having him. And as long, like, how likely is it really that he gets over 50 yards and a touchdown? I would say not that likely, and thus don't be scared to get away. On the Detroit side, the Chiefs have been good versus tight end for a couple years now. However, Detroit does use the tight ends in the red zone a lot. So Sam Laporta, he is, a rookie tight end. There is some buzz about him being good and Goff having trust in him, but I think you can pay down as a flyer to, say, a James Mitchell or Brock Wright and hope for a touchdown. After all, you just need a touchdown out of them because they are going to be so cheap on this slate. So, that being said, if Travis Kelce is healthy, I expect his ownership to be around 30%, 40% maybe. And if it is any lower than that, I'm likely going to play a lot of Kelce and just act like he is fine. Realize we skipped over the wide receiver matchups here. Frankly, it looks like the Chiefs wide receivers have a much better matchup than the Lions do. However, both look good, particularly WR1 and WR3 for the Lions. So that is Josh Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then 1 and 2 for the Chiefs. And really, I like either one of them. For this situation, I will absolutely lean on MVS over Sky Moore due to ownership. So lastly, we will get into defense. Look, defense is going to be super low owned. It's a very high scoring game. Now, there is some merit to playing them. Just understand, for them to be optimal, they're going to need to get a touchdown. You're going to need a special teams touchdown, a pick six, a fumble recovery for a touchdown. You're going to need something like that to happen. And it is very, very possible something happens. And there's probably too little of ownership going towards the defenses in this matchup. And you should maybe consider a little bit just as far as the leverage, because nobody will have them. Kickers are absolutely in play. Game total's 53, so you should absolutely consider playing either kicker in this game. With a 53.5 total, it is going to be a very interesting game. Should be lots of scoring, lots of fun, and hopefully one of you guys come out on top. Let's win some money. Happy football season is here. Let's go. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to all our videos. I will be coming out with a Sunday main slate video later this week, and I am just pumped. Football and these big DFS contests are back. Let's win some money. Hopefully one of you becomes a millionaire. Adios.